going on this list. One made a copy of Fated Retribution, a Resolute Archangel in the main, 2 Nyx Fleece Ram, 2 Pearl Lake Agent. So a different build, but probably inspired by the success that we saw in Minneapolis last week. Again, a runner-up finish for Blue-White Control.
We're underway here in round number 2 of 10. Wijaya will play a copy of the Tri-Land Mystic Monastery. You're going to gain a little bit of life with a Tranquil Cove.
This is the matchup that upended Blue-White Control as well.
Absolutely.
Jeskai in the finals.
Andrew Johnson, our champion in Minneapolis last weekend. We'll see what happens here in a bit of a rematch. Wijaya going to play another Tri-Land here and pass the turn back. So 2 copies of Mystic Monastery here for Vidi. See what Ewing can put together here. There's 2 mana. He's going to start off with a Nyx Fleece Ram. Again, those are main deck for him, just a couple copies.
Nyx Fleece Ram, very, very good against Goblin Rabble Master, less so against Mantis Rider. So we'll see which threat Vidi has here on the 3rd turn.
It's a Mantis Rider. To the skies we go, in for 3. Ewing's going to go down to 17.
Between Nyx Fleece Ram and main deck Last Breath, his Blue-White Control lists do have a lot of game against Rabble Master, but Mantis Rider is much more challenging for them to answer once it gets on the table. And another interesting thing about Zachary's list here, no copies of Devouring Light. That was something that Jeremy had multiple copies of and was very good for him on camera. 4 copies of Banishing Light in Zachary's list, but no copies of Devouring Light, which means once these creatures resolve, he has fewer answers than the list we saw that came in second in Minneapolis last week.
Goblin Rabble Master will be countered by Dissolve, so it's time for Ewing to scry here. He'll take a look at the top card, decide if he wants to keep that. Devouring Light was very impressive last weekend for Bylander.
It was really good, especially against Sarkhan, which was a card, you expect to see a lot of it. It's going to be powerful against control decks in a general sense.
See a Temple of Epiphany there for Wijaya.
Devouring Light did some great work.
Little scry action here for Vidi, deciding if he wants to keep that card on top or not. He's slowly chipping away, and looks like he's going to put this card to the bottom. Yes, he will.
Devouring Light is also a very nice combo with Elspeth.
Sure.
And there are 0 copies of Elspeth in Zachary's list, so that might be part of the reason he's not playing Devouring Light.
He's going to have to work pretty hard for his wins here, but he's going the Pearl Link Ancient route instead of the Elspeth route.
Zachary's list just not great against a Resolved Mantis Rider. Hard for him to block, not a lot of answers.
Temple of Enlightenment puts the top card to the bottom. It's a Battlefield Forge. There's a Sarkhan. See if this resolves. That's going to get the thumbs up. And if Mantis Rider is tough, I imagine this one is as well.
Exactly. The only answer Zachary has to the Mantis Rider that's resolved besides his sweepers is Banishing Light, which we can safely assume he doesn't have at this point. And now even a turn 5 and Hostilities does very little. So Zachary in some trouble.
Ewing going to draw a card. Look, there was a copy of Dissolve. That might be one turn too late here as he's under the gun from some flyers. Gaining a little bit of life from Nyx Fleece Ram along the way. We will see. See a Radiant Fountain come down for Ewing. Here's 5 mana. There's Hostilities. That's just going to trade with the Mantis Rider. He's also going to kill his own Nyx Fleece Ram. So now we can see if he can actually deal with the problem that is Sarkhan.
Again, 4 Banishing Lights in the list, but besides that, not a lot of answers. He also has 1 Resolute Archangel. If he gets to that, maybe he has some time to find an answer, but he does not have a ton of answers to this situation.
It's also taking quite a few chip shots, and the one thing we know about Jeskai is it's really good at burning you out once they get a few hits in.
Oh yeah, these Sarkhan shots, they are not chip shots. These are punches straight to the jaw.
There's a Tranquil Cove. Ewing going to go up to 10. All you can do is pass a turn back. Lightning Strike going to go upstairs. You can see in Ewing's hand he has a copy of Pearl Lake Ancient, but we are not in that kind of game right now. Ewing going to go down to 7. Vidi going to tap some more mana. Here come the burn spells. So, Lightning Strike says, are you ready to go down to 4? Looks like Ewing's got a counter spell for that one. So Dissolve will take care of the second Lightning Strike. A little scry action here. Zachary going to put the top card to the bottom. And back with Jaya's way we're going to go. He will draw a card. See what he wants to do with Sarkhan this turn. Elevator's going up to 7. Ewing going to go down to 3. See if he's got another burn spell. That's a Lightning Strike. And that is going to do it. Vidianto Wijaya going to win game number 1 here over Zachary Ewing. Jeskai aggro up a game over Blue-White Controls. We turn our attention to the sideboard. Ewing's going to need some help. I hope he's got some Devouring Lights over there.
He does, in fact. 2 copies of Devouring Light in the sideboard to go along with a 4th copy of Last Breath, a Heliod, God of the Sun, a Fate of Retribution, 2 more Nyx Fleece Rams, 3 Disdainful Strokes, 2 Negates, an Erase, and 2 copies of Bramaz. I like the counter spells a lot in this matchup. The Negates, of course, VD's deck, very spell heavy. Disdainful Stroke. Some of the threats that Zachary has to concern himself the most with are Stormbreath Dragon and Sarkhan, so Disdainful Stroke lines up very nicely there. I don't know if he wants any more copies of Nyx Fleece Ram. They seem not great in the matchup, though VD will have some draws where that card's going to be very powerful. The 2 copies of Devouring Light I like here, and I think that I would bring in the 4th Last Breath as well.
Vidianto's side, he's got 2 copies of Bramaz, King of Oreskos, 2 End Hostilities, 2 Suspension Fields, 3 Disdainful Strokes, 2 Negates, 2 Anger of the Gods, a Keranos, and a Narset. Starting to become the industry standard now, those 1-ofs.
The Keranos and the Narset are part of this package of being able to go long against control decks, especially when you're able to supplement that with counter spells. So I think you're going to see those 2 big cards come in alongside the 2 Negates and the 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke, and I don't think he's going to do a lot of sideboarding besides that.
Yeah, I don't think he'll change too much, but I do like where he's at in this matchup already.
Maybe he'll bring in the Suspension Fields because he saw main deck Nyx Fleece Red. Maybe he's worried about more of that plus Bramaz or something like that. But the only thing that I'm really confident about are the counter spells alongside the Keranos and the Narset.
Time to talk about our wonderful States and Regionals program. No longer will we be having Open Series events during Pro Tour weekends. We'll be doing some sweet organized play instead.
Yep, we've had such positive feedback to these programs that we're going to make it a year-round thing. As Zachary just said, every Pro Tour weekend, we are going to be running either our state championships in the autumn and the spring or the regional championships in the winter and the summer. The next one of these events upcoming will be the Winter Regional Championships, February 7th and 8th. Again, every Pro Tour weekend, so if you're not qualified for the big show, make sure to come out these events for Open Series points, prizes, medals, and lots more.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And, oh, what do we have here?
They're hanging out.
They're all together, teaming up finally. Our Squirrel Creature Collection Series, all on one playmat, free to the first 200 players at the Regional Championships during the winter, February 7th and the 8th. StarCityGames.com/regionals for more information. I will be getting one of these. I know a guy.
You're going to, oh, you know a guy.
I know a guy.
You're not just going to go to regionals and battle?
I don't know if I'm going to go regionals. February is a long time away. I don't know what I'm going to be doing that weekend.
Okay. But you did battle in Washington State.
You're darn right I did. 3rd place, thank you very much.
Yep.
Still got it.
Well, would have been nice for you to bring home the medal.
Well, I would have liked to bring home the medal, but I will take my 3rd place and knock some of the rust off the old game.
For those of you who don't know this, the first time that I met Cedric was at Grand Prix Columbus. He was playing in the top 8 or top 4 against a buddy of mine, and he was wearing an old high school wrestling medal. So I would assume that this prize would be very desirable for you.
I would like to run the medal back. Not many people know that story. That's one of the ones I don't bring up.
Oh, well.
I kind of hide that.
Well, I bring it up all the time, so I'm helping you out there.
Not entirely sure why I was wearing a medal that weekend. It did make me stand out.
That's true.
It actually worked out perfect, right? I ended up topping the tournament with my stupid medal on, and I was also wearing a wrestling shirt that weekend and a backwards Sacramento Kings hat.
Yep.
There it is. What a great tournament. 2004, mind you. That was a decade ago.
Yeah, that was a good.
That is horrifying.
It's a pretty good run for a lot of my people in that tournament. I think I top 16. It was a good weekend.
Craig Krempels made the finals, lost to Mike Turian.
Mike Turian, the nuts.
Who got knocked out by Savage beating? That was Jerry. That's what happened. Krempels beat him with a Savage beating off the top with Entwine.
Beautiful.
Well, not to Jerry.
Krempels,
I think Jerry started that tournament 11-0.
Sure.
Yeah.
Krempels is the nut, though.
All around good man.
Yep. Legacy Open champion.
It's kind of a shame. Not a lot of people I think know what Savage beating does. It's too bad. It was
aptly named.
It was game over
Aptly
if it was
named.
cast back then. One heck of a Magic card. I had a fun tournament. You know that was like the biggest American Grand Prix at the time?
Yes.
That tournament?
I do.
And I think it was like 800 people or something. That was the biggest one. That's laughable now.
Right.
But that's like, oh my God, there's so many people here. And that is just like a joke now. Oh, how Magic has grown. Zachary Ewing going to be on the play this game. He's going to take a look at his starting 7, see if he can find something to keep. Looks like both players are relatively happy. We're underway here in game number 2. A Tranquil Cove will start things off. Wijaya is going to draw a copy of Battlefield Forge, play a Flooded Strand. pass the turn back. Just some lands to open things up here for Jeskai, of course. Don't really get the party started until turn number 3.
I wonder how much harder it gets for Zachary to win the game now that he's playing against Disdainful Strokes. Because I guess his win condition is Pearl Lake Ancient, so that helps a lot, but his card drawing and a lot of his other threat cards are going to be much more challenging to resolve.
Flooded Strand's going to go to the graveyard here, which is going to go down to 18. A Plains with 1. I have a feeling we'll see an Island with the other. So there are the basics, and it looks like we're going to start things off with the Seeker of the Way, a card he has 4 copies of. This card has been fluctuating in Jeskai. Some people play 2, some people play 0. VD has 4.
And I think once you're playing Seeker of the Way, it changes a lot of other decisions that you want to make. Like how many comes into play tap lands are tolerable once you're trying to cast things on turn 2. What kind of spells you want to play, because ideally you want to have a lot of cheat spells in your deck alongside Seeker. And then are you playing fewer creatures in general because you want to play more spells in your deck to enable prowess more frequently?
Flooded Strand gets sacrificed very quickly by Ewing. He is going to nullify that Seeker of the Way, keep the board clear. And he will draw a card to move to his 3rd turn of the game.
I really like it when R&D prints expensive finishers that can't be countered or are good against counter spells somehow. Just end the freaking game.
Get it over.
Get it over with.
Yeah.
You just play another one.
It's a Flooded Strand there for Wijaya. Just going to pass the turn back. So no 3-mana spell. No Mantis Rider, no Rabble Master. If you're Ewing, you got to be thrilled about that as he just plays a Plains and passes the turn back.
Although it's unclear if VD, even if he had a 3-drop, would want to run it into a potential dissolve in that spot. Having your 3rd turn eaten up by a dissolve and allowing your opponent to scry is pretty bad. So VD might want to set up a spot where he's able to resolve multiple spells or play something with negate backup to try to minimize the damage that something like dissolve can cause.
Wijaya kept the card on top with Temple of Epiphany. He's going to tap 2 mana here and try to resolve a Seeker of the Way. This is kind of what you talked about. Looks like that's going to be good to go. Ewing going to draw his card now.
We've seen this dance before with Mono Blue Devotion in last season. Try to get a threat into play. Don't run anything that juicy into one big counter spell and try to get a clock and start bobbing and weaving through your opponent's answer cards.
Temple of Enlightenment. Top card to the bottom there for Wijaya. In for 2. That's going to work. So Ewing going to go down to 18. 5 mana. An attempt at Jace's Ingenuity. See if this resolves. And Wijaya says, no, thank you. A Disdainful Stroke's going to counter that.
And at this spot, that's a really good spot for Zachary to cast that, because if it resolves, great, and if it doesn't, that's okay. He's got to work his way through these counter spells at some point, and he wants to be able to resolve his big stuff.
Last Breath a card that Ewing does have in his hand. Going to play a Tranquil Cove here. Go back up to 19. And just pass the turn back. Wijaya will draw a card. Jeskai Charm is what he's found. Going to start by attacking here for 2. Ewing going to take that 2, go down to 17.
And VD's not trying to get that greedy getting in damage here. Just trying to remain as flexible as possible. Leave spells in his hand because they allow him to fizzle Last Breaths. Just be careful. He does not want to run these things into counter spells willy-nilly.
Don't need to change anything. If your opponent's not doing anything, I'm not going to either. Just keep attacking.
The problem is the risk of Pearl Lake Ancient means at some point he needs to speed it up a little bit. But for now, the pacing of the game is good for VD.
Well, if VD believes that Ewing is playing a list similar to Bylanders from last weekend, Bylander didn't have Pearl Lake Ancient. He had Elspeths.
Right.
So probably doesn't know that Pearl Lake Ancient is a thing that can happen. Here's a dig through time. So that's a real card.
That assumes that VD is even aware of the second place list, which he may not be.
Of course. So, Mr. Ewing will take a look at 7 cards. Of course, choose 2 of them. The glue that holds this deck together.
And something I think we're going to see a lot of over the next 2 years.
Oh, it's not going anywhere. That's card number 1. You see a Pearl Lake Ancient among these cards.
A busted.
And he will, he thought about Pearl Lake Ancient. See, it's also kind of thumbing between a Tranquil Cove, and now he will go with the Ancient.
Pearl Lake Ancient is pretty attractive here. The question is just, does something too bad happen to me if I tap out?
Sure. There's certainly potential for that.
Yes.
Ewing will draw a card now.
Even at 15, this Jeskai aggro deck has so many sources of 4 points of damage, though a Radiant Fountain now gives him a lot of cushion.
Got to feel kind of safe now, right?
I would.
It's crazy to think that 2 life makes a difference, but I would feel a lot more comfortable with 17 tapping very low for a Prolink Ancient as opposed to 15, which is going to sacrifice a Flood Strand here.
He also gets the combo of bouncing the Radiant Fountain back to his hand.
Oh, that's it right there.
Oh, yeah.
That's game over. That's the hardest of locks. Get that and the 2 Tranquil Coves. Now you're really cooking.
When I saw this card in M15, I thought this card is, in a subtle way, going to make my life a lot more complicated going forward. Couldn't really play it before because of Beautivault, but now there aren't really that many good colorless lands for value, and Radiant Fountain is something that decks can play.
Jeskai Charm going upstairs. See if Ewing wants anything about that. Here's another Jeskai Charm, so the first one resolves. Let's see what happens to the second one. Ewing does have a copy negate in his hand. Does make you wonder if he's a little scared about what's going on here. His life total has basically been cut in half if this Jeskai Charm resolves.
And Zachary may want to devote this turn to casting Pearl Lake Ancient. So he's just going to say, okay, this stuff resolves, because right now what I'm trying to do is get the Ancient in play and then untap with negate back up.
He's down to 9. And that's what it all revolves around. The Pearl Link Ancient can't be countered, of course, as there's a Shivan Reef for Wijaya. Here's an attack. It's time to try to ambush this Seeker of the Way. See him slide the mana over. There's 7. 2 mana conveniently available for negate. Pearl Link Ancient, of course, cannot be countered, does have flash. Big ol' 6/7 is that Leviathan.
The combo with some value lands.
Yeah. Here's 2 mana. Let's see what this is going to be. It's going to be a copy of Dig Through Time. So that one's on the cheap. Wijaya going to try to find something, while it looks like Pearl Link Ancient is still on the stack.
And this feels negate worthy to me.
I would have some interest in negating this, personally. He's going to give it, looks like he's going to give it the go ahead.
Because VD is just so likely to find something off of this that you need to negate anyway.
Taking a look at 7, Stoke the Flame Sarkin among these cards that he's found.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty brutal for Zachary here. There's a Stoke the Flames and a Jeskai Charm, so he can just take 8 points of damage if he wants it. He can take a Mantis Rider and a Sarkin if he's looking to try to fly over the Pearl Lake Ancient. A lot of options now.
CVD's going to consult the grip here. Pearl Link Action still on the stack. Of course, can't be countered, but this is all in response to that big 6/7. And me, I don't want to give a player of Vijaya's caliber all these options. No, thank you.
And a lot of good ones there for VD too.
Yeah. So 2 cards added to the grip. This looks like he may have picked up a copy of Narset too.
So even if this combat goes wrong, next turn he can play this Narset with negate back up. So that might be enough to kill Zachary almost regardless.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see what mode is being played on Jeskai Charm here. It wouldn't surprise me if it has put Pearl Link Ancient back on top mode. That's what it looks like it may be. Though, if that's the mode he's selecting, I have some interest in actually activating the ability to get those lands back.
Well, if he bounces 3, he cannot play the Ancient next turn with negate back up, which may be the concern. I'm surprised Zachary didn't pull the trigger on negate at some point in all of this.
Yeah, me too.
There's just enough going on here that I would not want to take this hit and allow a Dig Through Time to resolve.
Ewing going to untap here. Going to draw Pearl Link Ancient again, so nothing has changed. We'll slide over some land here, decide what he wants to do this turn. Being at 5 against this deck, very scary. Going to go with Resolute Archangel.
Now, if this was in Zachary's hand the entire time, I like his sequencing much better.
Well, he knew what he drew.
Yes.
He drew Pearl Link, so it's there.
Yep.
So now there is the Archangel, and Wijaya does not have a counterspell for this thing, so all of a sudden, Zachary Ewing looks like he's going back to 20 life.
And there's only one copy here in the 75, the same that we saw on the winning list, or the second place list rather, in Minneapolis last week, but we saw this card do a lot of legwork.
Yeah, Bylander had his in the sideboard. Ewing has his in the main. And wherever you put it, it does have an impact, as Ewing is back into 20 life, and Wijaya's got a whole lot of work to do. Also, knowing in the back of his mind, there's also still a Pearl Link Ancient over there.
Exactly.
Wijaya will draw a card for the turn. Ewing still with negate available too.
Now keep in mind, we've seen Narset overpower even this kind of stuff before.
Well, the Enlightened one is quite a tough one. Wijaya tapping 3 mana here. That's a Mana Strider. A touch outclassed by the Resolute Archangel.
And Vidi with removal spells left over, he can just sit on negate. He can stoke with negate up, although that is his entire turn.
Yep.
Also just play this and say go.
Oh, tough guy coming into the red zone.
And I think we're going to see a stoke before blocks are declared.
You nailed it. There's a stoke. Archangel conveniently a 4/4.
Yes.
And so you do see the attack there. Of course, Mantis Rider does have Vigilance. They use the Convoke, the 2 creatures, plus the 2 lands. Looks like Wijaya will have to take 1 to cast that. He's down to 19 now. One of those pain lands, but he's looking to clear the Archangel out of the way, which is going to bite the dust. And you have seen Ewing be very patient with this negate.
And keep in mind, Zachary's list, as we mentioned before, not a lot of answers to resolve Mantis Rider. The Resolute Archangel is one of them, and that's gone. There's only the 1 copy in the 75. No way to shuffle it back in. So at this point, he's looking at finding a Banishing Light or trying to overpower it. Or if he draws one of his sideboard Devouring Lights, that's the answer as well.
One Hostilities was the draw step. We're going to go for a little 2-for-1 action here. Wijaya's going to use negate, and I think we might finally see the negate here from Ewing. And he's brought it forward.
He's been so patient.
Yes, he has.
It seems like a good spot.
Yep. And he will negate the negate. That means then hostility resolves. Clear the board up. And he is stabilized at a rather healthy 17 life, though Wijaya is quickly untapping, so you do have to be a little scared there. I believe he does have Narset in hand. Yes, he does. Not a bad board for that card. Wijaya going to play a Mystic Monastery and pass the turn back. We have seen Narset win games like this before.
It's going to be a little bit more challenging this time because we know that Zachary has a Pearl Lake Ancient in hand. So it's going to be hard for Narset to attack multiple times. And hostilities also makes it more complicated.
Yeah, I think that may have come rolling off the top of the deck. Either way, Narset is down. Wijaya is reaching for mana right away. Let's see what this is going to be. That's a copy of Bramaz, King of Oreskos. So we'll send things back Ewing's way here in just a moment. Though he may have some interest in maybe countering this spell, he will dissolve Bramaz. Okay, so now it's time to scry, and he just wants to keep the board clear to let Pearl Link Ancient take it home.
Curious, though, to see him dissolve a Bramaz of all things, because Pearl Lake has that card pretty well covered.
Sure. Ewing will draw a card. He will pass the turn back with the 6/7 looming in his hand, of course. Wijaya quickly draws and passes the turn back. Ewing will tap 7 mana. There is Pearl Link Ancient.
Thud.
And now it's time to try to close this one out. Time for the attack step in for 6. Wijaya gonna go down to 13. There's a Plains and passing the turn back. Wijaya draws a copy of Seeker of the Way. He will deploy the 2/2. Simply pass the turn back. Ewing draws a card. And hostilities in the grip, you can see. It's time to go to attackers. 6 more. Wijaya down to 7. Another thud, as you so eloquently put it. Looks like Ewing may have some action in a second main phase. It looks like a Banishing Light will take care of the Seeker of the Way. Keep that thing off the table. Keep pushing through some damage. Though, he does miss a point of damage that way because of prowess.
Exactly, and that's a big deal here because if he doesn't have another spell to cast, then Vidi gets one more turn. Zachary probably just has this thing locked up, so it doesn't matter too much, but I think a pre-combat Banishing Light would have been the doctor ordered there.
Yeah, Wijaya is at 1 instead of none in this instance. Vidi does draw a card. Looks like it was a copy of Keranos. Mystic Monastery, the play. There's the attack, and he will concede the game. So Zachary Ewing will win game number 2 here over Vidianto Wijaya. Blue-white control and Jessica Aggro headed to a third one.
And that's the blue-white control game plan right there. Keep the early game relatively stabilized. You know, early on, Zachary having a last breath to answer a Seeker of the Way, that's the thing that Zachary needs. It gets out of control if he starts taking the hits like he did early on in game 1. And especially the post-board games, where once Vidi gets on tap with his threats, it makes his counterspell so much more powerful. So Zachary just keeping his head above water in the early game, I think that's what this matchup comes down to.
It's time to talk about our favorite. Okay, not our favorite, just something we like. We like the creature collection. It's not hippos yet, but we got the ooze.
So the ooze was the October giveaway for our game night. We're not doing that anymore. We're rolling over to November. We've already showed that it's going to be the worm token and pins, but we have turned the ooze into part of our StarCityGames.com creature collection series. You get 2 of these tokens every time you sign up for a Legacy Open, and if you go over to the website or to our booth at any one of these opens, you can buy deck boxes, play mats, sleeves, dice bags, the whole 9.
I'm excited. I like the ooze. I'm a big fan of the ooze.
It's frightening but adorable, which is great for a Halloween-themed giveaway.
Yeah, they're smiling, so they're probably innocent, right?
But they're skulls, so it just dissolved some sort of creature, and now is consuming its leftovers. So
I suppose that's true.
Adorable, yet horrifying, which is great.
Now available.
And now available for sale.
StarCityGames.com, our creature collection, our newest edition, the ooze.
It looks like they're high-fiving in the photo, in the illustration.
Yeah, they're proud of their handiwork.
Yeah. Look what we just did.
We killed multiple people.
And now
It's not so bad.
And now we're feasting on them or something.
There are worse ways to spend an afternoon. Blue-white control versus Jessica Aggro, a rematch of our Minneapolis finals. Pretty sweet. Blue-white control again. Jeremy Bylander playing that deck last week to a runner-up finish. And well, we know what Jessica's done in the Open Series. Has won all 3 standard opens since Constant Arcure has been released. Looking to go 4 for 4 this weekend. We'll see if anybody can stop the deck. Definitely a great player piloting in here this weekend in Vidianto.
Quite a resume at this point.
Quick update for you guys. Joe Lissette with blue-black control. He's 2-0 now. I have a feeling we'll see him next round.
Oh, for sure. We haven't had Papa Joe on camera in quite a bit.
That's right. Doing what Joe does. Island go. Island go. Probably counter a spell. Kill you somehow. I will be curious to see if he does have SCGOAK in his deck.
I don't think Joe rolls that way.
Nah?
I think he likes grinding. 2 copies of Pearl Lake Agent. If he can find a way to get it down to 1 copy, I think that's what he wants to be doing.
Well, if Cuneo couldn't, I don't know if Joe can.
Exactly.
We'll see. Camps are kind of split on SCGOAK in the blue-black control deck, so we'll see which way Lissette is leaning on that. Some players heavily in favor of the Nightmare Weaver.
I'm not a big fan. Right now. It seems poor against Abzan, which is either the most popular deck or the second most popular deck in the room. Because they have all this removal they can't do anything with anyway. These heroes downfalls, some utter ends.
They're just turning him on.
And I just don't want to turn him on.
Wijaya going to be on the play. He's kept his hand. He's happy. Ewing's going to keep his as well. Game number 3 underway. Mystic Monastery to start it off. Ewing will draw a card, so I'll pick up a copy of Trinkle Cove.
And these games are so much defined in the first couple of turns.
Yeah.
Does Vidi get a board going? Does he get to untap with counter spells? Or does Zachary keep it clean, and then we move on to the mid game where Zachary has a big edge?
Temple of Enlightenment. Top card to the bottom. Wijaya. Got to play a Seeker of the Way. Pass it back. Ewing will draw. Another copy of Temple of Enlightenment. There's an island. Telling he could have played a land that comes into play tap there. Elected not to.
But that's a big win there for Vidi in some respects, because if Zachary had last breath, you probably would have seen it right there.
Yeah.
When he doesn't have mana up to trigger prowess and keep it alive from that removal spell.
Flooded Strand getting it sacrificed here. See what land Wijaya elects to get. I imagine an island. So quickly searches through his deck. There is an island, so the Jeskai mana base is online. 3 mana, as we know, the Flashpoint.
Yep.
So we'll see if a 3 mana spell is going to come down here.
And keep in mind that these decks now only have 5 mana sweepers and hostilities and such, so you can be a lot more aggressive curving out early on in the game because it doesn't come back to haunt you on turn 4. It's turn 5 at the earliest.
Especially when you have counter magic, too, that can take care of it.
Oh, for sure. Another big difference between and hostilities and Supreme Verdict.
Nullify takes care of the Mantis Rider, but an attack for 2 is going to bring Ewing down to 18. So you saw him playing an untapped land, getting a counter spell. This land will enter the battlefield tapped. There's a Temple of Enlightenment. It is time to scry. Top card does stay on top. Back to Wijaya we go. So on the 4th turn, Vidi draws a copy of Brahmas. Shivan Reef coming in.
These Brahmasses must be out of the sideboard.
Yep, 2 of those. There's an attack with the Seeker. And now there is the King of Oreskos. Does this resolve? It does not. Another copy of Nullify. I'll tell you what. Nullify has looked good in this game, but it looked really good last week, too.
For sure. The biggest cause with this card is it's just kind of hard to cast on the 2nd turn. But it is 2 mana for hard counters against creatures and helps Zachary get to turn 5 where he can start casting things like End Hostilities or Jason's Ingenuity. His big payoff cards.
Banishlight is going to take care of the Seeker of the way. Wijaya going to just draw and pass the turn back. Did not find what he was looking for. Ewing will untap and draw here. There's a 5th land. It's a Flooded Strand. Wijaya will draw. We'll take a Lightning Strike. There's a 5th land. This is a Sarkhan.
Unlikely to resolve, but Vidi's hand just clawed with 5 mana spells, so.
I'll take that, Mr. Sullivan. It is in. Take a little look-ski poo.
This might be, can I devour him like this?
That's what it feels like to me.
And the answer is yes.
Yes, you can.
It's exile.
Yeah. Bye-bye, Sarkhan.
Because you do not want to cast that without being sure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You better check. You ain't going to draw a card for the turn. Looks like he does have a copy of Dig Through Time in his hand. There's a 2nd Flooded Strand. So he can work towards a pretty large graveyard here. He will sacrifice both of these. Maybe he casts a Dig Through Time while the shields are down.
The old fetch land delve synergy.
Powerful.
Subtle but powerful.
Yes, it is. I don't know if it's subtle.
Well, it's not something that if you were a relatively new player and you were looking at a deck list, it's not something that would jump out at you as being a powerful synergy in the deck. But once you become an advanced player, you realize these are the sort of interactions that defined tournament Magic decks.
Absolutely.
High value, low opportunity cost. And 2 cards you want to be playing anyway.
Yep.
That's how you build a deck.
3 mana. We're going through time. Whole graveyard's gone. Take a look at the top 7, and Zachary will choose 2.
I'm sure Zachary is looking forward to Dissolve and something else sweet. That would be the ideal dig through time here.
Yeah. There's a negate among those cards. Resolute Archangel as well, kind of a safety net.
Yep.
Card that was able to help him win game number 2.
Not quite as great in this spot because Zachary doesn't have an immediate need for it, and there is some risk of, Vidi has Disdainful Strokes in his list. By the time you're looking to resolve that, you may not be able to push with the counter spell, so he might want to give himself something a little bit more productive in the short term. So I do not believe that he was able to find a dissolve in all of this.
Well, I think we're going to find out really quick here because in Vidi's hand, he actually has his singleton copy of Keranos. I don't know if he's going to lead with it this turn because he drew a copy of Goblin Rabblemaster. There is the Rabblemaster. And now that is Nullify again.
And I like Vidi picking a spot here because he knows he can get this resolved.
Yep.
And this is going to force Zachary to react and spend mana on his own turn, most likely. And it allows the tempo of the game to get swung back into Vidi's favor.
It's a Goblin token in for 1. Ewing's got 3 mana. He's got himself a Banishing Light. Bye-bye Rabblemaster, but it has left its Goblin behind. Here's 3 mana. There is the King of Oreskos on his side of the table. So now things have shifted back Ewing's way.
Well, Vidi now has a spot where he can tap out for something big, and if he has Keranos, Narset, some big payoff card, he might be able to generate enough value to steal this game from Zachary.
Picked up a copy of Mantis Rider, but there is Karanos got a Storm. So now we'll see how things change on both sides of the board. Ewing's going to draw a card. You saw him use 2 copies of Banish Light already this game. Don't know if he has a third one in the grip or not, but he's going to need it because Karanos can take over the game all by itself.
Yes, but if he does have it, I think he's a huge favorite to win this game.
As do I. The King of Oresco is going to come to the red zone along with its cat token. Ewing's going to try to close this game out now. There's a block with the Goblin. Wijaya wants to keep his life total high to get as much use out of Karanos as he can.
Especially since there's a Burmaz now blocking, so not a lot to be done with that Goblin token.
But there is the 3rd copy of Banishing Light, so there goes Karanos. You mentioned, if he does have the 3rd Banishing Light, it does feel like a pretty big favorite.
Exactly. The only card in his deck with just a ton of raw power left, I guess his copies of Dig Through Time and his Narset. That's about it.
He's got to try to go over the top now in the air, so there's an attack for 3 in the air. Ewing's down to 10. Temple Epiphany going to come in here for Wijaya. Top card's going to stay on top. Pass the turn back. The life race does favor Wijaya right now. There is that.
I don't think Zachary took that Resolute Archangel many turns ago.
I don't think so.
Passed on it.
This is an attack.
He couldn't even cast it now if he had it. Oh, I imagine VD's just blocking the cat token straight up.
Most likely.
There's a Burmaz attack. Now, Zachary has a Nyx Fleece Ram in his hand and Jason's Ingenuity. He cannot cast both. And so he has to decide, do I need to just look for help this turn, try to resolve Jason's Ingenuity even though it risks playing into something like Negate? Can I just play the Ram and maybe try to find some spot down the line? I think Zachary, coming to the right conclusion there, is that he needs help. He can't just play the Ram and hope that's good enough.
There's Jason's Ingenuity. Shields are down, though. It's not hard for this deck to be able to deal 7. Stoking a Lightning Strike is definitely available. You see, Wijaya is reaching for mana here. This is scary.
And I think he's been sitting on a Dig Through Time as well for a while now. So this might be the spot that VD wants to resolve this. If he finds Disdainful Stroke or Negate, great. And if not, he can probably find some burn spells.
Looks like he may have Negate in this situation. Yep, he will negate Jace's Ingenuity. And now here's 3 mana. And this is the opportunity to resolve the dig as well. Pretty big turn while the shields are down there for Wijaya.
Now, does Wijaya have any 1-mana spells in his deck?
1 mana spells here, 2 copies of God's Willing are in his main deck.
Okay.
I would be surprised if those are in his deck after sideboard.
Sure. Just a weird way, you know, you can put all the mana down and leave 1 more card in your graveyard for future Dig Through Times otherwise. A small thing, probably not that impactful, but if there's no 1-mana spells here, VD's probably better served just spending the additional mana and then keeping 1 extra card in his graveyard.
Back to Ewing we go.
And Dig Through Time to me is really compelling in decks like Jeskai aggro because this should be the stage of the game where blue-white control starts turning around and locking it up, and it doesn't have the same inevitability because VD with counter spells and Dig Through Times can get in some shots and then continue to play into the mid game, which is a spot where most aggressive decks just fall out of the game entirely.
Vermouse comes into the red zone yet again. The cat token, of course, blocked by Mantis Rider, but 3 damage just come across. It's 7-10.
I'm not a big fan of Burmaz in this matchup against Jeskai aggro because they have a lot of cards that make it not that very good. You know, Stoke the Flames if they have Banishing Lights or Glare of Heresies in their sideboard. And also the game can just be like this, where it's about a damage race. Burmaz does not block that effectively. And Zachary may have to end hostilities away this Mantis Rider and lose his Burmaz. And the damage he's dealt to VD just doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. It's not that kind of game.
Exactly. Game 2 was the formula, kill everything and then win with a Pearl Lake agent somewhere down the line. This sort of damage race game, that's playing right into VD's hands.
Nyx Fleece Ram. Pass the turn back. Mantis Rider going to come in. Ewing down to 4. Jeskai charm your face for 4. You have a counterspell. All right, you're not dead yet. Looks like Wijaya just has to pass the turn back. Up to 5 as Ewing draws a card.
Now, if Vidi was going to do that, I would have preferred for him to use that on Zachary's upkeep while Nick's Place Ram was on the stack, because you at least force the mana, Zachary, to use the mana on his own turn rather than at the end of Vidi's and then on tap with all of his mana. And that could really matter if Zachary has something like Jason's Ingenuity.
Absolutely. Tranquil Cove going to bring him up to 6. Ewing with 1 card left in the grip. 6 or 7 are the life totals. He's trying to hang on. The last card I believe in Ewing's hand is that copy of End Hostilities. I think he may be considering casting it, but he's not going to. Over to Wijaya we go. Vidi will draw a card. Looks like it's a copy of Mantis Rider.
Yeah, to some extent, Zachary's kind of made his bed at this point. He can't end hostilities away this board.
Mantis Rider going to come in. It's going to resolve. It's an attack, and that's going to get the job done. Vidianto Wijaya is going to win this match over Zachary Ewing. 2 games to 1. Jeskai does it again. Takes down blue-white control.
We saw the lack of Devouring Light in Zachary's Game 1 list. Haunts him a little bit Game 1 as Mantis Rider went unchecked for way too long. And in Game 3, Zachary's... I felt the way that his deck was situated for Game 3 was not great. I don't like Bermaz very much in the matchup. And he was trying to play this sort of damage race game, which plays right into Jeskai Aggro's hands. Vidi's deck so much better suited. In fact, that's what his deck is entirely focused on doing in the post-board games. And the Bermaz just did not really line up with the rest of the cards Zachary had access to.
Feels like a classic example of role assessment in that matchup. As you mentioned, Game 2 was the formula. Kill it all, Pearl Lake Ancient will clean it up.
Now, Bermaz against something like Boss Sly, I like a lot because Bermaz can win the game by itself. Unchecked Bermaz is better than every card in their deck put together almost. But against a deck like this, Vidi has a lot more removal spells for it, and he can also fly over the top of it, not just with Mantis Rider, but with Stormbreath Dragon. If Zachary's have set for Bermaz, Vidi can answer with a Sarkhan and just minus and kill Bermaz outright. Vidi's deck, even though it's an aggressive deck, has much more play against Bermaz than the typical aggressive deck. And I just don't think the upside of Bermaz is worth the cost there, and you saw it on display in that 3rd game.